Today I want to take a look at how to use PowerShell PnP to provision columns and schema for SharePoint list. Here we are looking at a standard modern team site, and we're going to create a list for customer tracking. And in that list, we're going to have a high number of fields. Now, with PowerShell PnP, we have the ability to provision a lot of different things. And what we're going to be doing today is provisioning list schema with a high number of fields. So maybe you have a list that's very wide and you're going to need to create a series of text fields, a series of date fields, a series of yes/no fields, and it's all very tedious to provision the schema, and you'd rather do it with automation than doing it by hand. This particular video is actually aimed at the power user, and you don't have to have admin rights. You don't need to be a tenant admin, don't have to be a SharePoint admin role. You don't even need to know what the admin center is. Anybody with the ability to modify a list could use this automation. So if you're a standard end user, a power user, and you have the ability to modify the list settings, those are the only permissions you need, and you can use PowerShell. PowerShell is not just for admins. So we'll go ahead and save this and provision list schema.ps1. We'll do our connect to, there's going to be a few different steps. We're going to connect to SharePoint Online with app ID and app secret. We're going to open SP list. We're going to open CSV. We're going to loop through CSV and add fields to SP list with data type. Those are the general steps we're aiming to accomplish. Write those out as comments first, fill in the details second. And for the header, we're going to want configuration. If you begin with your comments, it's actually easier to design your PowerShell logic. Now on the SharePoint site itself, I'm going to open the AppReg new page, generate a client ID and secret. This will give us something we can use for connecting to the site programmatically. This is something that I like to do. It's not required. You can use the ability to connect with web login if you wanted to use your end user identity and not even go through these steps. I like it as a way of having a stable connection into the site and then using that app ID number to grant permissions for site collection full control, which is going to be something that we can handle right here with the XML. We click create, and now we're going to do the trust it button to trust this particular identity into the site. It's one way of doing it. You don't have to go that way. There's actually other methods for authenticating the Connect PnP online. And with that, we're going to go ahead and configure our site URL right here. And we'll bring in the address of our site /demo. Very good. Yes. And we can connect with app ID, app secret. So this will be connect PnP online. We'll give it the URL, app ID, app secret, there it is. And I like to echo back get PnP web, just as a way of knowing did we have a successful connection. And these parameters are actually client ID and client secret. There we go. We have a successful connection to the site. One alternative for doing this, just so that you guys know, and if you're not a site collection admin, which this sort of pattern does require SCA rights on the site to generate a client ID. One other way of going about it would be to use web login. And this actually has MFA support. So this would be your pop up on your phone, that sort of thing. You could connect with use web login. We're not going to be using that in this demo, but just so you know, it is possible to connect more than one method. So next we're going to go ahead and get our list title, which is the name of the list that we're looking at, into the site. That is customer tracking. Copy paste from the rename dialog, saves a little bit of typing. Bring that over here, and we'll say $list equals get PnP list and identity list title. There we go. And here we're going to say CSV equals import CSV. And for this, we are going to use the same file name as how we're tracking today. There we go. Now for that, we do need to actually create a CSV with some of the details, which fields we're looking to create. So here I'm going to have the field name and then the data type. And this allows us to scale up and make a high number of fields. Now with our content here, we actually are going to switch over to MS Excel and look at it from that side. So from inside of Excel, we may have things like a first name, a last name, an address, city, state, zip, email, phone, all your standard contact information. But then we might get into something where we have numbered fields, a very wide table. And there are different reasons for why this might come up. It's really up to the designer of the application, but there certainly are times where this can happen. Maybe your order fields, you don't want to do a one-to-many, you're trying to not have a denormalized database, you want to track all of this in one list, that's fine. But maybe you have order fields 1 through 20. You have amount fields 1 through 20. And you could track something like this where you're trying to scale this wide list, but it's just so tedious to go in and create all these fields by hand. Maybe you want to use PowerShell PnP. And again, PowerShell PnP doesn't have to be for the admins only. It can be something for end users. So here we could say order date, the order. Yes, yes. And these, maybe we'll rename this to order number. Yes, and we can do order number sequencing to 20, the amounts, the dates. We could do the same thing. But you guys get the concept that we're trying to make a high number of fields, very tedious process, and delivered. So was it delivered? Yes or no? And you know, there might be times where you want to make a very wide table and setting up all these fields is going to be tedious at best. So here we're going to have text for our data types, and that will cover most of them. But here we're going to have number for our data type, for our hand number of fields, going amount 1 through 20. Good. And then we're going to have date 1 through 20, just to show that we can support different data types. And then down here we'll have Boolean, and that'll be 1 through 20. So date, number, Boolean, text. We have a lot of different fields, populated our schema, and we're well on our way. So here I'm going to say don't save, open this up again, preview it, looks good, VS Code can see it, fantastic. Okay, and here we're going to say for each row in CSV, we want to loop through, add the field, bring in the types, back over that way. Yes, yes. Add to default view. And in this case, for add to default view, I'm going to say true for all of them. Are they required? I'm going to say false for all of them. The type will be from type. The internal name and display names are both actually coming from field name. I'll make that type. Type and name. We'll make it very easy. Go ahead over here. And we're done with Excel. So we'll work with name and type. And in my case, the display name and internal name are going to be the same. The type is set. And that's effectively what we're looking at for each particular row. We'll go ahead and execute and see what we can do to create those columns. Okay, so here we have the add to default view saying false. Yes. And we'll leave out the required, no need to mention. Modifying our pattern a little bit. All right, that's executing. And you can see it sort of enumerating each field as it's working its way down the listing. And here we can see that our list has been populated with all of the different fields from the CSV. We have, of course, the Microsoft default title field. That's our starting point. But then all of these were added from our CSV. And then we get into the repetitions. Order 1 through 20, amounts 1 through 20, dates 1 through 20, delivery 1 through 20. And they're coming in with yes, no, date, time, number, all of the different data types that we would expect. And then here when we come to the new dialog, we can validate those data types yet again, where we see the amounts, the numbers, the text. We can see a date picker here for the date fields. We have yes, no, which is a checkbox for the Boolean fields, and all of that's coming in through PowerShell. So the ability to use PowerShell as an end user is a pattern we should all look at more. This is a very simple script. There's not a lot to it. It's very short, and effectively what it does is read a CSV and execute automatically what we could do by hand but would take all day to do. I mean, coming through and creating 89 fields is a tedious process. But if you open that as a loop and you execute the add field command, plugging in your inputs where needed, we can now use the PowerShell process even though we're not administrators. So if you're a power user, if you're a citizen developer, just kind of a standard end user permission level, these things are available to you. PowerShell doesn't have to be for SharePoint admins only. We can use it from an end user perspective to do things like provisioning a high number of fields. Thanks for watching.